Ouais. Bonsoir, bienvenue à la réunion
Good
ordinaire.
evening. Welcome to the regular public meeting of the Dieppe City Council. You will note that the mayor look has changed, so I will ask for your patience if things don't occur as organically as they used to. First of all, the city of Dieppe recognized that the land on which it operates is part of the unceded traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq. The treaties did not deal with the surrender of lands or resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq title and established is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship that the Mi'kmaq co-developed and signed with the British Crown in the 18th century. The treaties did not deal with the surrender of lands or resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between the parties. Dear colleagues, let's have the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I call the meeting to order. Confirmation of quorum by clerk. Yes, Councillor Turgeon-Roy is also dialing in. Conflicts of interest. Have you received any conflicts of interest? There are none. For the adoption of the agenda, who would move? Councillor Brideau moves, seconded by Councillor Le Boutillier on the question. There are no questions. We pass it. All in favor of this resolution? Yes. Good. No one is against. Carried. The first item is presentations, inquiries, and petitions. Inquiries by council members, Kodiak Regional RCMP. Chantal Arsenault-Farah is with us. Do you have any information to share with us this evening? Good evening, Your Worship, and all councillors. Let me begin by telling you of some of the initiatives of community policing. They continue to be very busy with various initiatives in the region involving youth, the elderly, and those at risk. On October 7th, our officers were at an evening meeting organized by the Francophone School District for parents who have youth in schools. During this meeting, our officers were invited to make a presentation about the role of policing in Canada, which is to maintain peace and also ensure public safety. It was a good presentation. We got a lot of good questions afterwards. Next week, you will perhaps have the opportunity to meet a group of officers who will be on mountain bikes in the region. We are once again organizing a specialized training for mountain biking. This training will be happening throughout our region. So if you see them on the streets, they will be more than happy to say hello to you. The crime reduction unit is again fighting open air drug consumption by patrolling in order to make sure that people are complying with the laws. They did very many identifications and they proceeded to 4 arrests with people who had warrants. They were called before court to answer to these accusations and to establish a date for being in court. General investigations. These are our officers who are involved with more severe crimes. On August 24th, around 9 o'clock in the evening, our officers went to theft in the shopping center at Champlain. The suspect went into the store, went to the cashier, and left with various articles worth $700. I'm telling you about this case because on social media there are many good pictures of the suspect. So I'm asking people to take the time to have a look at these pictures, and I'm bringing this to your attention because when employees tried to approach this person who had fled the store, he had threatened that he had a firearm. And so this brought the seriousness of the issue to a different level. He was in a dark gray Dodge Journey. So in social medias, and we're asking people to look at these pictures and information. If you have information to help us, please tell us about it for Crime Stoppers. There's another issue of sexual interference. There were additional accusations brought against a man of 37 years of age for sexual assaults and other infractions committed in the Greater Moncton area and in other neighboring areas. This investigation was begun by the police force in Fredericton when they received a complaint about a man who was filming children in different hotel pools. This person, age 37, was arrested and an accusation was brought against him. He was released under certain conditions. Shortly after, in December 2022, the 37-year-old man was arrested by the RCMP Kodiak because he was not complying with the release orders. Stephen Blackwood then appeared in provincial court in Moncton and was accused with sexual assault and sexual contact as related to an incident that happened in a school of the region. He was then put into detention. During this investigation, we learned that this man had been accused of committing other infractions since about 2018. In September 2023, Stephen Blackwood pleaded guilty to these accusations as a result of things that happened in November 22. On October 6th, other accusations were brought forward in court in Moncton. 31 accusations of voyeurism, sexual interference, and sexual assault. Stephen Blackwood is in prison, and he will be appearing in court at another date. I'm bringing this to your attention because if there were ever people who were victims of this person or who had information about events related to these accusations or others, we're asking you to contact the Kodiak RCMP, or these are things that happened in other places, please contact the police in your area. This concludes tonight's report. Thank you for this information. Are there any questions by members of council? There are no questions. Thank you for your presentation this evening. And we certainly understand if you don't stay for the rest of the meeting this evening. Thank you. Presentation report, Age-Friendly Municipality by Richard Thériault.
Okay.
It's Marc Grandmaison. I was on holiday, but thank you anyway for welcoming here this evening. This project was undertaken last year, and a final presentation was given to the Meta Group last January. So His Worship, who's absent this evening, was there and heard the presentation of this report to the Meta Group. It was launched by your association, all the polls that were undertaken by the Senior Citizens Federation of New Brunswick. But Dieppe wanted to be a leader in this field and also for senior citizens in the area. So that's why we began this study to see what are the best things that we could do for the citizens in this age category. So this evening, there are three things that we're going to do because we did this in two major steps. First of all, we did a public survey and we wanted to identify what the major issues were. Then we did a World Cafe, and I'll explain what that is in a moment. But this was a group of leaders in this age group from the city of Dieppe and the actions that they were recommending that were coming out of this study. So the first part of the survey or the poll, you have the whole PowerPoint that we presented to the MEDA group, which includes the graphics. We'll get through it faster, so I won't show them all this evening, but you'll see that this evening we have a summary, if you will, of all this. So there were 307 people who answered, but when you have more than 200 people, statistically speaking, then you have a good representation of the population. Once again, when we undertook this poll, we realized that those who answered were people who had homes, those who lived in condos or apartments. We also had people who were francophone and anglophone. So we had a good representation, a wide representation of amongst all participants, so we could do a better profile of what the issues were for this age group. So, generally speaking, I can answer questions later, but the level of satisfaction for active living in the municipality is very high. So, generally speaking, people were either very satisfied or satisfied, and there were only a very small minority who said they were not satisfied or that there were issues. So, generally speaking, the population of the city of Dieppe in this age group was very satisfied. Also, with regard to residences and housing, they want to remain independent as long as possible, either remain in their homes or go in a condo, but not live with family or go to different housing, because this was part of the questioning that we had done. They want to remain independent. And we say when 70 is the new 50, you can see this, that the aging population is looking to remain active and independent. You see this in the poll. The three main interests are physical health. They want to remain physically healthy. And this came out several ways in the polling, either by activities that they were undertaking, but also by using sidewalks or trails or other sport infrastructure that was available. Then mental health and relaxation. A lot of people said that they were either looking for activities or getting out of their homes to improve their mental health. And it was important for them. The third is socialization. It was very strong in this survey. They wanted to socialize, to be more involved in things that they do. We're not talking about going to an event or a production. They're talking about doing things together and building a new community of friends. So very satisfied with infrastructure and safety. So physical exercise. So the things that they do with the aquatic center, I always forget the name, but at the Rotary Park, there's a place where there are all kinds of games that can be played. And pickleball is huge, as you well know. They were all looking to do pickleball, but this was really specific to the day. This population is looking to not go out in the evening. So if you have anything to think about and spaces that are rented to them, they're rented in the evenings because in the day they're used for something else. So they don't have any spaces for themselves. So the Boys and Girls Club, for example, they will rent you space, but after the working hours. So for this population, it's a small challenge to bring people in because it's in the evening. And this is one of the big things I want to draw to your attention. They're satisfied with the communication because they're often on Facebook. They go to the city's website. Where it's a challenge, as you'll see later, is that how to get information which is relevant to them in this whole ocean of information that is out there. So there are some opportunities there. So website, calendar, these are used. Uh, Word of mouth is very strong with these people. They go to the markets, they speak to each other, they know how you know how that works. And if they meet in groups to see a show, well, do you know that something else is coming? There's a lot of word of mouth going on, very important for this age group. Citizen engagement is very strong. When we ask them, do you want to participate? Do you want to help? Do you want to be part of a volunteer group? We were surprised by the number of people who said yes, we are interested in helping or participating or be members of these associations. Any questions up until now, or do you want to wait until the end?
On va attendre à la fin.
I think we'll wait until the end. But safety, well, the two negatives that came out is street lighting. There are some streets that present challenges, and I know this because the street where I lived before, there's a part that was not well lit, and speed. We'll hear this. We were expecting to hear these two answers, in fact, even before doing the poll, but the answers validated that what we thought was going to be the answer were the answers. We then had a World Cafe. This was a tool that we used with a group of leaders. We're talking about people, for example, who were on the seniors group. There were club members and people who are really active in this age group, but also very active in community affairs. The World Cafe session is a tool we used in order to provide all participants with an opportunity to participate and provide an opinion instead of having people monopolizing the conversation. Everyone was sharing, but also provides an opportunity to people who are providing information or giving feedback to build on each other's comments. So it was a good way to do things in a much shorter time frame. We had good feedback from the participants. We want to maximize participation and find realistic solutions. So what we do is we take the information and we use tools through the World Cafe to channel what's going to be chosen amongst the most important issues, the things that will bubble to the top. When we did this, the main facts were presented to participants beforehand. So we did the poll and the survey. We looked at the observations. You have it in this PowerPoint. We showed all the tables and all the information, which then seeded the conversation for the beginning of this activity. The needs and solutions were discussed in a participatory way, and the participants identified the priority actions they wanted to move on to, and then the participants also identified possible actions. It's all great to say, well, look, we have this, but how do we get there? So participants talked about all of that. Now, here are the two main ideas that came out of this event. The first axis, the most important one, is a space specifically designed for seniors. I'm already going to answer this by saying why specifically for seniors? Because they want things for the day, because they feel more at ease with doing things during the day. Secondly, when you say, well, you have a golden age club here, it's not the same thing. That's not what they're looking for. A golden age club is a club. You have to pay to be a member. You're a member, and the activities are only for those members. So they're looking for something more open to serve the population in a much less restricted way. It doesn't mean that these golden age clubs can't be in our viability solution. We couldn't find a wider solution, but they don't have this same objective with what we're presenting by way of solution here this evening. So they want to have a permanent location accessible through the day with physical activities or cultural or other things like this. Not cultural, but more, you know, knitting or crocheting, because these activities are more socially oriented. People share and they feel that they're part of a group that's working together. For social activities, the location that they're looking for should also be able to bring in social activities or other special activities and to have access to resources to help them in their more difficult activities. There's an example in New Brunswick that I'll mention to you in a moment. And when we talk about resources, we say that one of the major challenges that you don't see here, that is often mentioned, is if I'm looking for something about nutrition, where do I go? If I want to talk about physiotherapy, where do I go? So they're looking for all the services that are relevant to them, either Meals on Wheels or caretaking at home. They have a great deal of difficulty in knowing who to call upon. And then if they call someone, they get sent on to someone else and sent on to someone else. It's very difficult. You understand the challenge to satisfy this population because they have a great deal of difficulty in finding their way through all of these different things. And we talked about current challenges. For this group, it changes often. We say, oh, you have a place here at the uni center. Well, you go there will say, oh, then that day it's not available. So you have another space at the Rotary Club. Well, then how do you keep this network in the know? It's you need a specific designated place and where people know to go every time. So they're not looking for just a location. They're looking for a location that is useful that people know to go to. The associations that live in their own boxes, every time they have an activity, they have to finish it. They have to, put their stuff in a box and put it away. And you put it away. You put it in a car and it goes somewhere. So it's a challenge every time. We don't realize it, but you'd have to walk a mile in their shoes. So there's no fixed point. The activities during the day and the evening should be the same place to prevent confusion among users. They're proposing to assess a possibility of finding a place which is dedicated specifically for seniors. They're looking for a place where they were involved in this activity and they were realistic. They said, look, we have to be involved in this. We have to find something. Maybe this place already exists and that we can go with someone else and we can develop this site together. Maybe it's a place that we buy or we rent. They don't know yet, but they want to look on a more wider scale and see any possible solutions that would be viable in the long term. And so this is why they're proposing to evaluate the possibility of having a place that is specifically dedicated to seniors and where people can advise each other. That's very important. I mentioned this earlier, but for the people, by the people, there a lot of these seniors have information, and there are a lot of people who already know what they have to do or who they should be calling or how they can get things. They know this. I know my mother-in-law, she has needs at home. So what can my spouse and what have my spouse and her sister learned? And so they're able to share this information with other people who are in the same situation. So a lot of seniors already know, this and can share this information amongst themselves, but how can they find a way of sharing it? And I'll tell you about this in a moment. So councils, the support, health, cultural activities, health, they're asking what they can do. So hire a consultant to do a feasibility study. So they'd have to do a research about any existing centers, resource centers for seniors. What is it? How is it structured? Not only financially, but also physically. So do an analysis of existing locations. They said, well, the next thing we have to do after this is let's do a scan of what's already in the community by way of physical space and what's missing and what's available. So identify the possibilities and then validate those who are the key people and the leaders. That's you. So after all this has been done, they would do a stage, engage and see what the possibilities are. Do you agree with the direction that we're going in? And if you say yes, well, afterwards, then they're going to do a financial analysis and then a final presentation. So producing this financial analysis would be done with the viability of this in mind, what it would cost, and it would be done in a very business-like approach. So there would be a financial analysis, a business case made for this purpose. Questions at the end? Okay. And then a viability study would, first of all, describe the location as services. This tool has to be usable when this location will be put into service, identifying users and partners. It could be one or more partners. It could be the province, it could be an association. We don't know that yet. Budget and revenue sources and viability and project needs. So this is what concludes this second axis. And the second axis was defined after identifying axis one. So we say, okay, it's all well and good to do this, but if you build it, they will come. But if they're coming, they need to be informed that it was built. I'm using English words because I'm using film analogies, but the people in this population need to be informed that the center exists, what it can do for them, and also how these activities can be promoted amongst themselves. We talked about communication and we talked about access to information and bring what is relevant. So the website, they don't know what is relevant to them. And also the importance of using word of mouth in this age group. They identify the fact that this group has all the information, that group over there has information, but they're not sharing amongst themselves. And there's another group here, and then the Golden Age Club here. They use different forms of communication like MailChimp. So how do we have a network of all this information, put it all together? Is there a better way of communicating for this age group? So there is a project to be undertaken with all association and groups who all have their ways of communicating. So develop an on-the-ground approach for communication. So with this age group, they said can't come from the top. We provide the information. We do all the information here, but it's not shared well. And is there a way that we can find all this information and share it in a coordinated way, in a central way, so we can push it out to our groups and the target groups? And then we talk about, they said, well, how do we do this? We're going to look at the possibility of creating a network. And so how is information going to be shared? Is it through a website? Is it through an email list? We don't know how it's going to work yet, but there would be a way of finding a more involved process, and maybe a simpler one, probably maybe through volunteers by the people, for the people. They wanted to share their own information. The relevant tools are email, a calendar of events, a Facebook page. These are the tools we could use. The recommended actions are establishing a committee for communication, identifying the networks and different media done by leaders who really know what's happening throughout the city, determine the process and the methodology with this group, identify and create these tools, and finalizing the communication plan and presenting to partners. I'm done. I spoke quickly. Have you any questions? Good. Thank you so much for your presentation. Are there any questions by councillors? Councillor Godbout, thank you. You've given me a great deal of things to think about. Thank you. It brought a lot of things to mind. I have a lot of questions. I don't know if you have answers for me to clear things up. I'm trying to reconcile various things in my mind. It's always a good idea to study things beforehand. But one thing that struck me when I read the report was, have we properly identified all the needs or the existing needs of the senior population? What's our source of information for that? There were two. First of all, there was the poll, which was widespread, and we brought things out that were important to people. And also the leaders that we had during the World Cafe meeting, they said, look, you can say 10,000 things, but here are the three most important things, or here are the two most important things. So this is how we moved forward. And so we polled seniors about their needs, and people are close to this clientele. They know what they need and what they don't need. So it's a very homogenous group. When I say leaders, these are people who are working with seniors and also groups that were parts members of associations, groups who had studied this. These were groups that had done this. So thank you for the question. It, it was fairly widespread when we identified and in the meta group, we can attest that these are urgent needs that we need right away. Will others come out afterwards? Possibly, but we have to resolve this first.
Une fois qu'on a vu aussi ça,
and once we'd seen that, somebody mentioned that there'd been a pilot project in Cocagne. It had been run by, I think it was the Third Age University. It was a pilot project, and they got funding from the federal government. And there, it was very close to what came out here without being knowing about it. But they called it a single window idea. A single window is what we are proposing. Have a center, a hub where people can go to get information, a single window. And then now were there ways to find out what they were doing? Well, for example, they offer Meals and Wheels. They give phone calls to people who need to talk to somebody. So they offer that kind of service. And this was launched in 2000 and or 2000, 2020, 2020, 2021, and it's still running today. They have a website, they have a Facebook. I forget their name, but I'll be able to get it for you later. So when this project came out in Cocagne, they really wanted it to spread, and for reasons I'm not familiar with, it didn't spread to other municipalities, and I don't know why. Was it communication that was never organized? But there were articles on Radio-Canada and elsewhere, but all I saw were the Radio-Canada article, and the provincial website mentioned it as well. Thank you. That's very helpful for me. I had another question, or something I was wondering about. When we introduce new concepts like this one, there are some groups feel that there's too much information. It's hard to get the information, but we might be criticized for just adding another layer to this excess information. So have we thought about this, or have we thought about the possibility that people say, oh, you're just adding another layer to make it even more difficult to have access to the services? No, the challenge that was brought up was that, I mean, all sorts of people are trying to add more layers. The city adds layers, the province, but then they have trouble because they don't feel affected by it. So all of these layers that have been added is perhaps not relevant for all of the needs. So that's why they're saying for the people, by the people. And that's why the single window concept was adopted in Cocagne, because it's people from that group. They're not paid for this. They're just there to inform people. And if they are not aware of a solution, but they'll know who to talk to within their own age group to come up with a solution. So it was more of a question of comfort, of who am I going to talk to? Who is going to be my single window? There's often been single windows, but what was brought up frequently by this group is that there is a single window, but it really isn't. Or there's supposed to be a single window, but there isn't. And so you talk about, well, what are the benefits of good nutrition? Well, I don't know where to send you. Whereas this group is really aware that they have these solutions within their group. They don't have all of the solutions, but it would be more efficient. And my third question, and I don't want you to think my number of questions indicates a lack of interest in the project. No, I'm just trying to really understand. One thing that we had seen in Dieppe in our recreation policies are this intergenerational programs. So in this one would be just for seniors. So how do we reconcile this desire for intergenerational interaction and these actions, measures that are targeted for only seniors? Well, what people are saying, they say, we don't have a place that is ours. And it's not to say that they're going to be isolated from the others. And I'll talk to you about the multi-generational project. It could come out of there, but they can develop an activity that will be related to schools, because this center, this place will create activities and events and actions to help them socialize and develop and thrive, but they don't have the place to do so. So it would be interesting to bring that out. Yes, and it is going to come out. And this group is the one that is going to be responsible for these groups. In schools, for example, I saw when people come to read to the first graders, it's magical and they're looking for it. But how do you do it in an organized fashion? Now, if you had a central point, a single window, you can do better. You can have a bigger impact. And I'd just like to wrap up on this. It's not my project. It's the project that all of this came out from the Seniors Association of New Brunswick that have guidelines, and they were studied by the age-friendly municipality, the MADA. And then when I was hired to do this, we said we want Dieppe to be a leader in terms of what we do with our senior. And this is our response for this. Thank you, and thank you for your responses. Councillor Leboutier now. Thank you. Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Godbout, for your last two questions. They were also mine. And thank you to the staff for having focused on this, because it really is a section of the society that we need to give back to more. We have to think outside the box. But your age-friendly municipality group, MADA, well, is it the same group that leads in Dieppe? But for 2 years now, we've had a council, a seniors council. Is this led by them? No, the age-friendly municipality exists like it was in the past, but that's why we're going to have a resolution later today to vote on the feasibility study, but the council still exists as well. And for that first priority area is the city going to support this group with the consultants to look at all of the options? Yes, a little later in the agenda, you'll notice that there's a motion that is asking for your approval for a feasibility study, and this would create these priority areas. Thank you. Thank you. It's really interesting. I'm really happy to see. I mean, I know we're going forward, but we're going to go even further with this. Thank you. And thank you for your presentation, Mr. Grandmaison. You were able to identify some very interesting points, and we're really eager to see what comes out of this. Thank you. And our next presentation will be on signage at crossings of multipurpose trails. Daniel Leblanc. Madam Deputy Mayor, councillors, my name is Daniel Leblanc, and I'm an engineer here at the Engineering Services Department. And I could just talk to you about our update on the concept relating to signage for crossings at public streets. This is the signage for the multi-functional trails. In 2010, the TAC, we call it the Transportation Association of Canada, published a set of guidelines for bikeway traffic control. So this was Dieppe decided to adopt its own based on the Quebec guidelines. And in 2012, the TAC published its second edition of the guidelines for bikeway traffic control, and they included trails in that one. They hadn't in the first one. So there are a number of different type of trails. It's some are based on the first concept, some are based on the city's concept. So what we'd like to do is update the standards throughout the city to ensure consistency and safety and security. This update would update and go beyond the tax standards. The street classification itself doesn't have an impact on the decision to indicate to have signage or not. And this would be apply on local streets such as Avant-Garde Street, as well as on collector roads. We currently have 43 multifunctional trail crossings in Dieppe currently. The maximum cost estimated to bring about the changes would be $38,000 plus HST. Here, I'd just like to show you the concept itself. This would be a minimum, of course. Here you can see, if there are extra needs, we can add them in the future. But just note that this only applies to two types of crossings, the mid-block crossings or the street crossings. So not to they wouldn't apply to roundabouts, just to street crossing intersections. So the first one would be a mid-block crossing, for example, on Vanier, Avant-Garde, and Centrale streets. Here you can see the panels, the advance crossing, bike and crosswalk, and that you can see before the crossing, and at the crossing itself, you have the signage indicating crossings for pedestrians and bikes on both sides. And on the roadway itself, you can see the bars, and on both sides, you can see the elephant's feet that indicate that the bike crossing, and there's also an indication for motorists to yield to pedestrians. The second type of crossing would be at a street intersection where there are no traffic lights, for example, at the intersection of Dieppe Boulevard and Yvon Street, or with the intersection at Rue du Moulin. So on the street, you can see on the secondary street, there's stop signs. They're already there, and we're going to indicate the stop line as well. And on the crossing itself, there are the parallel lines that indicate a pedestrian crossing, and the elephant feet that indicate the bike crossing. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from councillors? If not, yes? Oh, sorry. Councillor Godbout, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Leblanc. Very helpful. I had a question. How will the implementation of these updates impact it? For example, I see elsewhere where they do different multicolor pedestrian crossings or different possibilities. Have you looked at that idea in your updates? How would that include that kind of activity? Well, we haven't looked at that specifically, but we can look at it in greater detail. Yeah. Ms. Spencer? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. In the past, when we had requests for multicolored crossings, we would give priority to the downtown area, for example, where the traffic is better controlled. But we had to make sure that we had the white lines that are mandatory, and then the multicolored lines were between the two white lines. So I wouldn't recommend that we mix them up, but we should keep them in where there are pedestrian crosswalks like downtown. I have a question. I had asked the question a few weeks ago. When you're on a trail and you come to a street, like the mid-block crossing that you have here, if we're not used to the city, we don't know where we are when we're walking on the trail. We don't know which street we end up on. So would it be possible to include signs indicating what street we're at when we're walking on the trails? Well, the concept that I presented today is only for motorists, signage for motorists, but we are also going to review the signage on the trails itself. That'll come up in the future. Thank you. We have another question from Councillor Godet. Thank you. I have a question. These signs and markings, is it something that's going to be implemented shortly? Well, the changes would be progressively implemented by Public Works, starting with the crossings that don't have any signage currently. But we would proceed gradually. I think it's a great idea because on Bourg Road, I went on there yesterday, and it's dark early today, and now, and people walk along the trails, and you can't see. You can't see when you get there. You can't see them, so we really need some signage. It's a good idea. Thank you. Mr. Melançon, would you like to add something? No? 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 Well, thank you very much for your presentation. It's great. Thank you. Now we're at questions by members of the public. Do we have any members of the public who would like to ask a question? Please go to the mic and identify yourself. Marie-Paul Ferron, I'm at 200 Acadie Street, and I'm here this evening as president of the Dieppe Golden Age Club. And one of the comments that was made earlier surprised me somewhat. I don't think that a age-friendly municipality should set aside the Golden Age Club because we all work for the same thing, for the same group. But if you allow me 2 minutes, I'm going to explain the context. The Dieppe Golden Age Club is a nonprofit that it aims to bring the elderly out of their solitude, to give them activities. All of these activities are held in the club building on the corner of Acadie and Sainte-Thérèse Streets. And that's where the Veterans Association of Dieppe organized most of their activities as well. This building, built in the 30s, and there was the parish room for the Sainte-Thérèse school church at first, and then it became the Golden Age Club. It belongs to us today, but the building is in danger today. It's at risk. The people have taken refuge, taken shelter on the deck of the building, and they broke the bottom of the porch. We had new carpeting installed last spring, and already they're all burned by cigarette butts and candles that burned on them. And with the age of the building, it's a 90-year-old building, that the risk of it catching fire is enormous. And this building, which was the first church of the parish, it signifies a lot for many people within the Dieppe parish, but it's a major center for getting gatherings of our seniors. And it's at the point today where a number of our seniors are afraid to come to the club because they come there and there are some homeless people sleeping on the porch. So my question is, can the city of Dieppe help us keep the homeless far away from our club? Thank you for your comments. I can understand your concerns. Madam Deputy Mayor, Mr. Ferron, this is the first time I hear about this. I will discuss it with staff to see what we can do We will certainly advise the RCMP of the situation as well. I don't know if you've ever called them, but I will make sure that we discuss it tomorrow morning with our team to see if there's anything that we can do concretely. This is the fourth time I've called the police. The first time they didn't come. The next two times they came because we had some homeless people sleeping there saying they couldn't move. So the ambulance, the police came. Last week, at the beginning of last week, I called and I filed a complaint for vandalism because it is vandalism. They're breaking things. And I was told that an officer was going to get back to me, and I'm still waiting for the call. We'll also see if there are some preventative measures that we can take for the building. I know it might take a small investment perhaps, but yes, we will talk about it tomorrow. Perhaps if you'd like to give your contact information to Mr. Richard so that we can follow up with you tomorrow during the day. And thank you for your comments. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the public? Did we receive any questions online? No, no questions online. Okay, great. So let's move on. The next item then is the adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting held on September 25th. Would somebody like to move the adoption of the minutes? It's been moved by Councillor Bideau, seconded by Councillor Godet on the question. So all those in favor of the adoption? Carried. Thank you. Motions. 10.1.1. Yes, Madam Deputy Mayor, the first resolution from the administration, we're proposing a pilot project for winter parking. As you know, climate change are very present in our region and throughout the world. Winter arrives a little later. We have a bylaw that says starting on December 1st, people are no longer allowed to park on the streets, but in certain winters, we don't get a snowfall until after December 1st, and we can't anticipate that. We also know that our neighboring cities adopted a pilot project last year, and because of the technology and everything and all of the human resources that they have, so in order to make sure that we are adjusting to the reality, we're suggesting a bylaw change on the winter parking, that the first snowfall after December 1st, that is when the winter parking prohibition would start to be enforced. So if we have a snowfall on November 15th, the December 1st will still be the date of the enforcement of the bylaw, but if the first snowfall is December 12th, this would be enforced as of December 12th. So this initiative is a balance between the quantity of the snowfall, because we've had some comments from a number of citizens on this, and so this is sort of a middle ground. It's an alternative that is reasonable in our opinion, and it's easily manageable. And you have some further information on the staff analysis in your information, but this is our recommendation, and if council wants to adopt it, we will amend the bylaw accordingly. So if you have any questions, we'd be here to answer. And to read the resolution, Councillor Brideau. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That Council accept the implementation of a pilot project for the 2023-2024 winter season to temporarily suspend the enforcement of paragraph 5.1J of bylaw C-1 2023 until the first forecasted snowfall of 5 centimeters or more after December 1st. And I so move it. It's been moved by Councillor Brito, seconded by Councillor Lantaigne on the question. Councillor Godbout. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. First of all, thank you for this great report that accompanied the recommendation. It's very comprehensive, very transparent. I don't know who drafted it, but it gave us a lot of information. And I'd like to come back to some of the points that were contained in it. These points are perhaps not as favorable to the resolution, but I did want to be more information. One of my concerns with this, for example, I put myself in the shoes of a citizen who parks on street, and perhaps new citizens, new residents are not aware of the bylaw, whereas in the past, and now all of a sudden there's a snowfall, and that's when they learn that something has to change, that there hasn't been much advance notice. So I thought it might be easier just to keep the date of December 1st. It's a fixed date because now it's a random date. Oh, the first date that we get 5 centimeters of snow. It's not something that you keep in mind. So if we say, okay, on December 1st, that's when it happens. And then, I mean, perhaps we could simply give warnings until there is a snowfall, but at least you know that you can park on the street until the first snowfall. But I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a citizen, and I mean, we're causing ourselves trouble. It would be more practical in my mind. It would be ideally for people to have a fixed date, to know what the rule is, what the bylaw is, to act accordingly, and then it's up to them to decide, you know, when they can stop. Anyhow, that's just what I was thinking in terms of the impact of this. Madam Deputy Mayor, we had that same question. Well, I thought you would probably have asked the question. So this does engage. I mean, of course, it forces us to have an awareness campaign. No, we already do. We always do it for the 1st of December. Do we still have people who don't respect the date of December 1st? Yes. So that's part of our history, but we will have an awareness campaign to inform people. This is the change being suggested. We invite people to respect what the bylaw stipulates and after the first snowfall. So the campaign will be implemented, will be developed, and we will give warnings in the first, yes, at first. Will it be perfect? Probably not. There might be some challenges, but we recognize that climate change are a reality as well. There are challenges in both options. My other question is that are we accommodating a behavior that we're trying to discourage by having more than one vehicle per resident? Yes, I know. I mean, we're trying to encourage people to only have one vehicle, and on the other hand, we're allowing them to park on the street. So I don't know if we're going to take a direction, then I think all of our policies should help us head in that direction. Is it too much too soon? Is it too strict? I don't know. I think that we're bending over backwards to allow a behavior that we're trying to discourage in other guidelines. So I have trouble reconciling the two. And my last point, and I'm wondering if you had thought of this as well. Well, I'm sure you have had, because it was mentioned in the report, but there's a mention of the idea that we have trouble getting tow trucks in case we wanted to remove cars that are parked. Can we have more information on that, the availability of tow trucks in Dieppe? Well, on that, for the last few years, we have some tow trucks that don't respond to our calls because our bylaw prevents their parking of their vehicles on their lot. So we have a situation, and we're trying to come up with a solution we think we've found one, but before, until it's confirmed, I'm not going to share it with you in public, but we'll have a better idea of how to manage the situation. But that's what's happening with the tow trucks. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I had forgotten that. Yes, that's terrible for what we're looking at here today. But yes, that was my comment in terms of these two principles and what we're trying to put forward. Thank you.
Conseiller Godette.
Merci. La question est...
Councillor Godet, thank you. The report says that in the last 2 years, the two neighboring cities changed their way of doing things. Were there any conflicts? Did we discuss this with them? Nothing comes to mind. Mr. Simard had the file. The pilot project was for one city alone. The second city, we decided to do the same thing, the pilot project this winter. So they have the experience, they have the data. So there didn't seem to be many problems in the neighboring city, but also let's say that winter was a light one for snowfalls. Maybe that's the reason why they want to have a pilot project for a second year. I'm just looking for the comparison. Thank you. Thank you. There are no further questions. All those in favor of the resolution will say aye. Ask if there are any against. Are there any against? The resolution is passed. Now, for community development, 10.2.1, you had the presentation earlier of the poll and the survey with new focus. So to move things along in this initiative and to have access to professional services for a feasibility study for a senior center, so it's recommended to keep new focus at the cost of 46,400 plus HST, and this is also part of the main plan for recreation. So we're looking for your support in launching this initiative. Thank you. To read this resolution, Councillor Godet. Thank you. Your Worship, the Council award the contract for professional services regarding a feasibility study on the implementation of the senior center to New Focus at the cost of $46,400 plus HST, and authorize that this expenditure be defrayed from account number 1-2-70-84-2585, General Operating Budget, Consultation, LRFS. I so move. Moved by Councillor Godet, seconded by Councillor Le Boutillier. On the question. Councillor Le Boutillier, thank you. It's not a question, it's an observation. And I think it's an important thing that our citizens know that the cost is not the total cost for taxpayers, but there are grants that are related to this cost. So that's mainly, I think that we should be stating that the true cost for the municipality also involves us. Yes, there's an amount of $20,000 from the Regional Development Society, and so the total would be $24,000 or $26,000. If there are no further questions, all in favor of the resolution will signify by saying aye. No one against. It's been passed unanimously. Next item is environmental management, 10.3.1. In 2019, we had passed this policy to encourage people, and this was part of our green initiatives in the city of Dieppe, to have a program which would install charging stations to use them at home. So we had an amount of money that was available for residences to implement this initiative. Previously, there were no partners who had come forward to help subsidize part of the costs. Since then, NB Power has implemented a program which supports this initiative. This year, the city of Dieppe has put no money into this initiative because other partners were available to do so. So we simply want to repeal this policy because there are other alternatives for our residents. And in the future, if there are any initiatives that come about, we will certainly consider them and bring them forward to you for your consideration. So that's the explanation for this. To read the resolution, Councillor Lantagne. Thank you. The Council repeal policy Z-3 2019-1 entitled Financial Incentive for the installation of charging stations for domestic use. I so move, Madam Deputy Mayor. Moved by Councillor Lantagne, seconded by Councillor Duviso. On the question. There being no questions, all those in favor of the resolution will say aye. It's been carried unanimously. Next item is 10.3.2. With the passing of the tree bylaw, we've taken into consideration, we've looked at it closely and worked hard to put into place. We needed to set up an appeal committee when citizens or businesses do not agree with some elements of the recommendation of the tree study or the staff study. So citizens will now be able to present an appeal to this committee. And the bylaw had identified that 2 citizens should be on the committee as well as a certified arborist. So for this evening, we have 3 individuals who are put forward as appointments. We are continuing to look for the 2 other experts to complete the number of 5 members on this committee. So they have 2-year terms, which will end in October 2025. Christian Léger, citizen, Mélanie Leblanc, citizen, and Jeremy Willett, who is a ISA certified arborist. So I put this forward for your consideration. Thank you. To read the resolution, Councillor Le Boutillier. Thank you. That Council appoint an appeal committee pursuant to Section 18 of Bylaw E1 2023 regarding trees. That the committee be composed of 2 citizens and 3 experts in arboriculture or related science, and that the process to appoint the members of the said committee complies with Bylaw A-4.1 2016 concerning the committees of council and the external commissions, authorities, and committees. That council appoint the following persons as members of the appeal committee for a 2-year term ending on October 10th, 2025. Christian Léger, citizen, Mélanie Leblanc, citizen, Jeremy Willett, ISA certified arborist. I so move. Moved by Councillor Le Boutillier, seconded by Councillor Brideau. On the question. One moment. Just how did we identify the nominations or the appointments? For Mr. Willett, this is someone who had contacted us through the public consultation process. He had many comments. He was very involved, and he's the only arborist who submitted his CV to us, and so he understands the bylaw, and he had a great deal of interest in it when we spoke about it on the phone. Madame Léger is a former employee of the Department of Environment of the province of New Brunswick, is a resident of Dieppe, and is involved in the environment. And through some other person, she said she was interested. And Mélanie Leblanc is also someone who went through the permitting process under the tree bylaw, and I think she works in transportation, if I'm correct. And she's aware of the procedure and also put forward her interest. These people came through other people. It was not a public announcement. It was a, do you know someone who is interested, who would like to be on this committee? We're still looking, so put the word out. Thank you. And I think we have found excellent candidates for this committee, but perhaps in the future, we will probably need a transparent policy for those who would like to be on the committee. As we go forward in time, we need perhaps the ability to study those who are interested in order to put this policy and make it available to people. Thank you. Very good.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions?
Are there any further questions? No? For those who are for this resolution, will say aye. Against nay? No one? So it's passed unanimously. The next item in engineering, 10.4.1. You have in front of you an additional piece of work for milling and paving on a designated road. We had come before you to add various parts and this evening, and that's because work is moving ahead well, costs are good, there have been no surprises happening when we've undertaken the work this summer. And so we recommend, and this is further to the approval of the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. So we are going to be adding a part on Amiro Street between Melançon and to Rue des Copains. So this contract, which would be allotted to Modern Construction 1983 for an amount of $589,772 plus HST, and which adds engineering services as a cost with Englobe Corp in the amount of $26,700. What's important to remember is the amount is the balance was in the budget, and it's in accordance with the province of New Brunswick and city of Dieppe. And I can also say that we are going to exhaust all of the envelope, which means that if the works continue to advance well, we could go further than Rue des Copains, and if we can do that, we certainly will. So if you see that the work is happening beyond Rue des Copains, don't be surprised, because it means we've managed the budgets very well. So it's for a recommendation. Councillor Godet will probably be happy with this initiative, because the question was raised at the last public meeting, and so we are going to proceed to adding to this contract. Maybe Councillor Godet would like to read this. That council authorized a second addition to the contract with Modern Construction 1983 Limited for the project entitled 2023 Mill and Pave Champlain Street at the additional cost of $589,772.97 plus HST. Authorize a second addition to the contract with Englobe Corp for engineering services related to said project at the additional cost of $26,700 plus HST, and further authorize these expenses be defrayed from account number 3-3-35-58-7670, General Capital Budget, Champlain Street, designated highway, that council authorize a budget transfer in the amount of $270,000 from account number 3-3-35-58-7660, General Capital Budget, Gauvin Road, Water Main, to account number 3-3-35-58-7670, General Capital Budget, Champlain Street, designated highway. I so move. Moved by Councillor Godet, seconded by Councillor Lantagne. On the question, are there any questions by councillors? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution will signify by saying aye. It's passed unanimously. Appointments 10.5.1. You have in front of you the name of Justin Poirier, who is the urban forestry manager. And so in order to undertake his responsibilities to implement bylaws, enforce bylaws, so this is to make, needs to be made official with your support. Will someone read this resolution? Councillor Lantagne. Thank you. That Council appoint Justin Poirier, Urban Forestry Manager with the City of Dieppe, as a bylaw enforcement officer responsible for the enforcement of the city's current tree bylaw, and that said appointment continues as long as said person remains employed with the municipality, or that the appointment is limited or rescinded by council. I so move. Moved by Councillor Lantagne, seconded by Councillor Brideau. On the question, there are no questions. All those in favor of the resolution will say aye. Against, nay. Carried unanimously. The next item, operations 10.6.1. You have here a recommendation following a tender, a call for tender. We recommend the lowest bidder, Roadway Systems Limited, at the cost of $267,729. These are site electrical upgrades, and you know that YQM and the activities of August 15th require some improvement for electrical requirements. This project will meet those needs. Also, there is a contribution of the regional corporation for this and other improvements for Music Art site. These are all part of the requests we have made, and we have had this confirmation. So we will ask you to proceed with the work here recommended. Thank you. Who will do the reading? Councillor Brideau? I think we're missing some people tonight. A council award the tender for the Music Art site electrical upgrade project to the lowest bidder, Roadway Systems Limited, at the cost of $267,729 plus HST, and authorize this expenditure be defrayed from the account 3-3-70-12-7619, General Capital Budget, Music Art Site. I so move. Madam Deputy Mayor. Moved by Councillor Brideau, seconded by Councillor Lantagne. On the question. The question I have is about having the capacity for concerts for YQM. That was the biggest event we had. My question is, that field was built in 2018, and 5 years later, we're upgrading it. Are we sure that we're okay with these figures? And I thought there was a big difference. So there was a difference in the tenders, quite a significant gap. Are we comparing apples and apples or apples and oranges? Well, you would know because you're in the apple field. But my first reaction is that the complexity, huge screens, this is all part of the venue infrastructure. First of all, the difference between the two tenders, I don't really have a comment about that other than to say that Roadway the company that had the best price knows this site. It's an advantage for them because they originally were on the site. I think that's the question you were asking. Will we have this capacity? We are adding two panels of 400 amp, two 400 amp panels. So the improvement, the electrical upgrade. So this panel is going to be bigger. So the panel also feeds two satellite 400 amp. So we can make two more of them, one for lights, one for video, one for sound, and one for all the other small electrical things that need to be plugged in. So it's going to be sharing the distribution for the powering. Last summer, it went well because, behind, we had generators for 400 amp generators. We've got two of them, and we hope that both of them are going to continue to work because it could happen that there might be problems. So we were looking for another one. We had difficulty in finding a third one. So this is an opportunity to really improve our site for this event and other events in the future. So for YQM, are we going to need a generator or we won't need a generator? I'd say we're probably going to see generators on site because things could still happen. So they could be on site. But according to the information we have and the way things are configured, we should be able to provide for all needs on the site with these upgrades. I just want to make sure that we're not going to do the same thing in another 5 years. I would say that in 5 years' time, we're talking about events and we don't know what's going to happen. But do we know what we need to have up till now? Is that right? I thought that the figures were the difference between the one figure and the other one was fairly wide. So if there are no further questions, we'll vote. All those in favor of the resolution will say aye. Against nay. Carried. 10.6.2. In 10.6.2 and 6.3, they're both related. So in order to improve accessibility for those who have mobility issues, we want to improve access to the site and on the site. So in the first recommendation, we're talking about the site preparation work for paving of the trail, J.K. Fraser and Son, at the cost of $23,000. And then in the second one, we're talking about paving the site with Dexter Construction Limited in the amount, I should have said that we have revised versions here. J.K. Fraser, 23,000, and Dexter Construction Company for an amount of $68,858. They're talking about $510 a ton. So that's to improve accessibility for those who have reduced mobility to get access to the site. Thank you. Who would read the recommendation? Councillor Godbout, thank you. That council award the contract for the site preparation work for the paving of the trail at the Music Arts site to J.K. Fraser and Son Limited, the cost of $28,345,000 plus HST, and authorize this expenditure to be defrayed from account 3-3-78-12-7619, General Capital Budget, Music Arts site. I so move, Madam Deputy Mayor. Moved by Councillor Godbout, seconded by Councillor Godet. On the question, there's a question. Councillor Lantagne. Thank you. Look, I know we're talking about accessibility here, but if we're talking about repairs and other kinds of work, we had an exceptional summer because of all the. I was at YQM, and had anyone looked at in some places where there was great deal of accumulation of water in front of the bar, for example. And should we see if there are any solutions, either putting gravel down or something like that, that's been looked at? And had you considered doing it for next year? When is it going to be done? Councillor Lantang, yes, the question was raised, and I think, Mr. Bourque, you have a detail to add about access to trails specifically with regard to the crowd in attendance. Yes, staff is working at a solution to this, and I think we weren't ready to bring that to you today, but we're working on it and we'll be bringing it forward soon. We could do it, it could be done at the same time as this. It's not under this work, but there was some urgency with winter coming. So I know that something's under discussion. Great, thank you. Thank you. The recommendation has been moved and seconded. Questions have been asked. All those in favor of the resolution will say aye. Against? Carried. The next item is 10.6.3. Councillor Godbout, would you read the resolution? That council award the contract for the paving of the trail at the Music Arts site to Dexter Construction Limited at the tender cost of $510 a ton for a cost of $68,858 plus HST, and authorize this expenditure to be defrayed from account 3-3-70-12-7619, General Capital Budget, Music Art Site. I so move, Madam Deputy Mayor. Moved by Councillor Godbout, seconded by Councillor Gaudette. All those in favor of the resolution will say aye. Against nay. It was carried. Next item, Planning and Development 10.7.1. You have a recommendation of the PAC with the firm of consultants looking at how to integrate the planning advisory, how to recommend the municipal development plan and zoning bylaw further to local governance reform. And so all the steps have been taken. The recommendation is to pass the recommendations and to proceed to first and second reading of bylaws Z9 and Z10. There are many team who are happy that the work is going to be done. So I put this forward for your consideration, the process that was done in the early part of 2023. To read this resolution, Councillor Le Boutillier. Thank you. The Council accept the recommendation made on September 20, 2023 by the Planning Advisory Committee pertaining to a request to amend the Municipal Development Plan Z9 2017 and Zoning Bylaw Z-10 2021 in order to integrate and harmonize land use planning principles in response to the White Paper's local governance reform. The Council proceed with the first and second readings of Bylaw Z-9 2017-10 and Z-10 2021-9. I so move. Moved by Councillor Le Boutillier, seconded by Councillor Lantang. On the question. Councillor Godbout, yes, thank you. It's a question to staff, not a specific one, but having done the whole process, we're at the end of it all. And do you have doubts or questions or things that you found difficult in the process? Maybe it was more a matter of judgment rather than what was recommended. Is there anything that you'd like to tell us about now? It's a very open question. Yes, thank you for this question. Clearly, the work that was put forward by staff, undertaken by staff, we had to take a lot of factors into account. With the annexation, where people were living, it was a different form, different than what 2017, when lands were annexed. there were no people who were living in the area. So for us, the issue at stake was when we began consultations with our experts and with external consultations with residents, at the end of it all, we had to recognize the rural context in the part that was being annexed. So we put a specific emphasis in the municipal plan to recognize this kind of territory, and we also ensured that future development with regard to density and intensity would be reflected throughout the municipalities. So this work was put forward, as was mentioned. There were a great many steps to go through in the whole legal process of annexation, and we also had to repeal ministerial bylaws, and these are reflected in the bylaw project that we put forward. So that's what we did. Thank you very much.
Alors, il n'y a pas d'autres questions.
So if there are no further questions, all those in favor of the resolution will signify by saying aye. Opposed?
C'est adopté.
Carried.
Alors, prochain item,
Next item, 10.7.2, to set a date for a public hearing. Yeah, we received a request to amend the zoning bylaw from Global Pet Foods. They are building on Hartnett Street, and they want to open another type of activity. They want to have a commercial kennel in the business and technology park. So the date of November 14th has been set for this, and we're asking for the written views of the PAC. And in this case, we're asking for a delay to have this by December 11th, 2023. So it's to get us started in the procedure. Thank you. And who would like to read the resolution? Councillor Lantin. That council schedule a public hearing on November 14th, 2023 at 7 p.m. at the Dieppe City Hall to hear objections pertaining to the proposed amendments related to zoning bylaw Z-10, 2021-10, for the land identified under PID 703-93566 in order to allow the use of a commercial kennel in a business and technology park zone, IT. That council requests the written views of the Planning Advisory Committee and extend the deadline pursuant to Section 110.3 of the Community Planning Act to December 11th, 2023, and I so move it. It's been moved by Councillor Lantin, seconded by Councillor Brito on the question. Councillor Leboutillier? Yeah, it's more of a question of information. Because now this is a commercial zone, a business zone. Do they give notice to neighbors in a radius of 250 meters or 150 meters? Well, the process, the procedure, what is it? Because this doesn't often happen in the business park zone. Yes, it's an excellent question. We were wondering that too. What we're going to do is send a notice to neighbors in a radius of 100 meters. But the amendment is going to have an impact on all the local owners within the IT zone. So we're going to send them a letter to each of the owners that has an ID zoning, because this is not a rezoning application. We're just amending the permitted uses within a TI zone, an IT zone. So we're going to send all of the owners who have an IT zone with outside of the 100 meters, plus all of the owners within the radius of 100 meters. So what is the notice going to indicate? It's going to give a summary of the application. Yes, we've changed our approach. In this notice, we will specify what is being proposed as an amendment, and it's not necessarily related to a specific project. We're not going to, we're really talking about the amendment of a text. So the information that's going to be shared will be on the text amendment. being proposed here, because this is a specific application from Doctopia, but if council desires, there's nothing to prevent going forward with, if we go forward with the text amendment, then another applicant could make a similar application in the IT zone. So we just have to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Conseillère Godbout.
Thank you, Councillor Godbout.
Le micro. Là.
Parfait, merci.
Thank
Suite à
you.
cette question-là,
Yes, following
est-ce que selon
that question,
la logique dicterait aussi que
according
si on
to
veut
logic,
inviter
then if we're going to
zonage,
give notice
on
to
peut
everybody who has the
dire
same
à ces
zoning,
personnes-là
we're
aussi?
going to give notice to all those
Si
that are
finalement ces
within
gens-là vont
100 meters of
appliquer
those
pour
people, because if
la
are they
maintenance
able
ou
to apply to
la
this
fin du
new
mandat
for this
serait
new use,
de
then
ceux
all
qui
of
vont
those who are
recevoir
within 100
éventuellement
meters of those who are
le
going to
nouveau
receive
zonage,
the
donc si
the
à
the
chacun d'offrir
new changes to the new zoning, they should also have the chance to make their comments. Well, these are procedures that are quite special in terms of the notice. I'm not against it necessarily, but if we when we used to do text amendments, it's not all owners are necessarily given notice by letter, but we could certainly try and see how many properties would be affected by this, and we can certainly look into it. Well, I would encourage you to do so, at least look into it and see what it means, because that would we're aiming at more transparency. That's what citizens want. And if I've set up shop beside somebody knowing what their permitted usage what, and the city changes the zoning, that my neighbor is now allowed to apply for. So I think I would have liked to have my word as much for the person applying as for the future possible applicants. So I would encourage you to broaden your scope. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having broadened your scope, but I think you should go even further. Thank you. Noted.
Prochain conseiller Godette.
Councillor Godette,
Merci. J'ai une question, je pense que c'est une bonne question.
just a question. I don't know if it's a good question, but I'll ask it anyways. Is it a kennel? Is it all indoors or can it be outdoors? Excellent question. Once again, this is a question that we asked ourselves internally. For us, well, the applicant could operate outdoors in their business model, but for us, the text amendment that we're going to proposing at the public hearing will limit it to an indoor use and not allow outdoor spaces, enclosed spaces. So it's important to note that this amendment follows the provincial regulations on animal well-being, and the SPCA gives operating licenses itself. We've received correspondence from them saying that it respects the provincial regulation if we make sure that it's indoor use. So they're preparing an outdoor use. Well, you bring a dog, I mean, from the parking and you go indoors, but no, but all of the kennel spots would be indoors. No, but tonight we're just setting a date this evening. The whole issue will be presented this evening, because this isn't the place to start the debate in terms of procedure. We shouldn't start negotiations here, but they are good questions. Yes. Thank you.
Merci. Alors, maintenant que les questions ont été
So now that the
posées,
questions have
ceux qui
been
sont en faveur de
asked,
la
all those in favor of the
résolution
resolution will
signifient par
signify
oui.
by saying
Oui.
yes.
Ceux qui sont contre,
Opposed, nay.
non. Alors, c'est adopté.
It's carried.
On est maintenant aux arrêtés municipaux.
We're now at
10.1.
11.1 municipal bylaws, bylaw C-1. This is a change to Jeannette Street. It's parking is prohibited on the west side between Gauvin and Napoleon Streets for safety and traffic reasons. We recommended that we proceed with this change in the bylaw C-1 relating to traffic and parking in the
Alors,
city of
pour la
Dieppe.
lecture
Thank
de
you. And to
titre,
read the bylaw by title only,
Conseiller Lantaigne.
Councillor Lantaigne.
OK. Par titre seulement.
By title,
Arrêté
bylaw C-1, 2023-1, a bylaw relating to traffic and parking in the city of Dieppe. And I so move it.
Première lecture. Alors,
First reading,
proposé par Conseiller Lantaigne,
moved
appuyé
by
par
Councillor
Conseiller
Lantaigne, seconded by
Brideau sur
Councillor
la
Brideau on the question.
Aucune question.
No
Ceux qui sont en
questions.
faveur,
All those in favor will signify. Oh, there's a question.
Conseiller Godet.
Councillor Godet, thank you.
J'avais lu un peu sur
I had read
cet arrêté-là, puis j'avais vu sur justement
a little
Fox Creek,
bit,
ça mettait
and on
tout le long
Fox Creek it said at all times on the east side from Leblanc to Melançon Street, and at all times on both sides from Leblanc Road to Amiro Street. So why, I didn't know why half of Fox Creek didn't allow parking on both sides, and on the other half of Fox Creek, you were allowed to park on the west side. I'm bringing up the question because I've received some complaints that certain nights, certain evenings, there are up to 10 vehicles or more on the side of the road. So I think Fox Creek should allow parking on both sides because there are no sidewalks there. So if you're coming on foot, or it shouldn't be allowed on both, parking should not be allowed, because if you're on foot or by bike, you can't go by. We'll take note of this and we will assess it. The trail should be built next year, next summer. The trail should be continued on the rest of the way, but we'll take note and we'll come back to council with that. Thank you.
Alors, pas d'autres questions.
Thank you. No other questions. All those in favor
Première lecture.
of the first reading will signify by saying aye. Contrary, it's carried in first reading. For second reading, by title only, Councillor Lantaigne. Bylaw C-1, 2023-1, a bylaw relating to traffic and parking in the city of Dieppe. And I so move it second reading by title only. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Lantaigne, seconded by Councillor Brideau
Sur la question.
on the question.
Aucune question. Ceux qui
No
sont en
question.
faveur
So all
du
those
bylaw,
in favor will
signifient par
signify by saying aye.
oui. Ceux qui sont contre,
Opposed, nay.
adopté.
It's carried.
Prochain item
10.2,
10.2,
and this is bylaw Z9. And this is following the recommendation of the PAC, following the annexation. So then these two bylaws are to be adopted by the councils, and so they will to come into effect. And so for first and second reading by title only, Councillor Brideau. Bylaw Z10? No, it's Z9. It's Z9 or Z? No, we're on Z9 right now. We're on Z9 first and then Z10. Bylaw Z9. I'm sorry, 2017-10, a bylaw to amend the municipal development plan bylaw. And I so move it in first reading. Moved in first reading by Councillor Brideau, seconded by Councillor Le Boutillier on the question. No questions. So all those in favor will signify by saying aye. Contrary. It's carried. And in second reading, Councillor Brideau. Madam Deputy Mayor, bylaw Z9 2017-10, a bylaw to amend the municipal development plan bylaw. And I so move its second reading. Thank you. By title only. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brideau. Seconded by Councillor Le Boutillier. On the question. No questions. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. And it's carried. Next item is a bylaw Z-10. Who would like to read it? Councillor Leboutier. Thank you. Bylaw Z-10, 2021-9, a bylaw to amend the City of Dieppe zoning bylaw, and I so move first reading. Thank you. First reading has been moved by Councillor Leboutier and seconded by Councillor Brideau. All those in favor will signify by saying aye, contrary nay, and it's carried. In second reading, bylaw Z-10, 2021-9, a bylaw to amend the City of Dieppe zoning bylaw by title only. It's been moved in second reading by title only, seconded by Councillor Brideau. On the question? None. So all those in favor will signify by saying aye. Contrary? Carried. Now we move on to bylaw Z-3. So following the local governance reform, and every now and then we have to review our bylaws, and we need to do it now to integrate this new territory. So there's bylaws on the subdivision of land. So this is to integrate the new territory. This evening we're here for first and second reading of bylaw Z-3. For first reading then by title only. Councillor Lantaigne. Bylaw Z-3, 2023, a bylaw relating to the subdivision of lands in the City of Dieppe, and I so move in first reading. Been moved by Councillor Lantaigne, seconded by Councillor Leboutier. On the question. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Contrary? Carried. In second reading, the bylaw Z-3, 2023, a bylaw relating to the subdivision of lands in the City of Dieppe, and I move it in second reading. Deputy Mayor. Moved by Councillor Lantaigne, seconded by Councillor Leboutier. On the question. If none. All those in favor of the resolution of the bylaw will signify by saying aye. And nobody's against? Okay. So carried. We are now at notices of motion. Okay, we've got there. Yeah, we're there. Are there any notices of motion? Councillors? No, councillors do not have any notices of motion. Inquiries, announcements by members of council. I don't remember which end we started with last time, so we'll start over here. Councillor Godet, you have any messages to share? Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I have nothing to add this evening. I've said everything I needed to say. Thank you and have a great evening. Thank you. Councillor Leboutier. Same for me. Have a great evening. Thank you. No, really, I have nothing to add. Thank you. Councillor Brideau. Because my two councillors have nothing to say, I have nothing to say this evening. Oh, wonderful. Okay, then we move on to Councillor Turgeon-Roy. Do you have a message to share with us this evening? The only message, the Deputy Mayor did a great job. Thank you. Congratulations. No, I have nothing for this week, and have a great week. Thank you. Councillor Godbout. Thank you. I do have one point to raise. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to break the trend here, but it's very short. It's just to advise council and the public that we had some busy weeks with the CRPA. We received a report that the three councils had asked for on the police services for the region. The report was presented to the three councils and was made public last Thursday. I just wanted to give you an idea of what might come up in the next few weeks. Now, the CRPA, the Kodiak Regional Police Authority, is going to have to first study the recommendations, because there are recommendations in the report that are aimed at the CRPA. The CRPA will have the ability to interact with the consultant directly as well for further detail. It'll wait. The three councils will study the report as well, and I will make sure I ensure proper communication of all the recommendations that come out of it. We're also going to meet with the RCMP to see the recommendations that they can implement. And there will be a presentation next week at our meeting of the Standing Committee. The chair of the CRPA will be here to present next year's budget. So there will be a lot of activity over the next few weeks. And there has been a lot of activity over the last few weeks, and you'll have the chance to ask your questions next week because they will be here to present. Thank you. Councillor Lantagne. No, nothing, nothing for me, but congratulations for your entrance into the armchair here. It was very successful entrance. Thank you. Good job. Thank you, and thank you to all of my colleagues. It went very smoothly. It was a little stressful, but it was smooth. So have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.